Congressman's daughter LAUGHS AT Judge Caprio, and LEARNS fear isn't remorse before whole scene story please tells US where you watching from she laughed. Right in Judge Frank Caprio's face. I'm sorry, is this supposed to scare me? My father is Congressman Whitfield. This will be dismissed by lunch. She rolled her eyes at an 80-year-old judge. The gallery froze. Then Caprio said four words that wiped the smile off her face forever. 10:14 a.m. Defendant laughs at presiding judge. References Congressman father's intervention. Those four words weren't a threat, not an insult. Something far more devastating, a request. And those four words would break Kendall Whitfield completely. Her attorney, Reginald Crane III, grabbed her arm. Too late. The laugh was out. The arrogance was public. In the gallery, Congressman Theodore Whitfield closed his eyes. 14 years in Congress. Judiciary Committee. Influenced appointments. Pulled strings, but not this time. His wife Victoria stared at her hands, trying to disappear. Miss Whitfield, you think this is amusing? Kendall smirked. I think it's a waste of time. We both know how this ends. Caprio reached for the remote. Then let's begin. Miss Okonkwo, dim the lights. The courtroom darkened. Kendall's smirk faded. She didn't know there was video. And then the four words. Show me the video. The video that destroyed her. St. Catherine's Elementary. A calm morning. Parents waving, backpacks bouncing, the tiny chaos of children starting their day. Miss Patty stood at her post in her neon vest. Her stop sign raised with the same gentle authority she'd carried for 23 years. Long enough that half the parents had once been the kids she guided across this same street. The screen flickered and the courtroom leaned forward. A white car entered the frame. Fast. Too fast for a school zone, too fast for anywhere children existed. 6-year-old Emma Vasquez skipped toward the crosswalk, unaware, shoelace undone, her hand clutching a paper crown she'd made in art class. Miss Patty saw it, the danger, the trajectory, the instant choice. She lunged, one arm out. A shove, Emma stumbling backward onto the curb, and then impact. A sickening sound, the kind that burrows into memory and refuses to leave. Gasps echoed in the courtroom as Miss Patty's body hit the hood, rolled, shattered the windshield, then slammed onto the asphalt. The car dragged her 14 feet before finally stopping. Kendall Whitfield's face drained to chalk, but the video wasn't done. 5 seconds, silence. Brake lights ignited. The car reversed, steered around Miss Patty's motionless body, and accelerated away. Judge Caprio's voice, barely above a whisper, cut through the horror. Miss Whitfield, that is you behind the wheel, correct? Yes. You stopped. You had to see her to drive around her. I didn't. You stopped. The text, the final blow. Judge Caprio lifted a stapled packet, the kind of courtroom silence that means everyone already senses doom. These, he said, are your text messages, Miss Whitfield. He adjusted his glasses and read the first one aloud, each syllable landing like a hammer. 3:22:14 p.m. OMG, this traffic is killing me. I'm going to be so late for drinks. Emoji, a laughing one. He paused. Impact time 3:22:17 p.m. 3 seconds. The courtroom felt that number like a punch. Kendall stared at the table, her breathing shallow. Caprio continued, flipping the page. And then, 8 minutes after leaving the scene, after driving around a woman you struck and dragged, another message. His voice hardened. Finally out of that school zone nightmare, see you in 20. He let the paper fall to the bench. School, zone, nightmare. He repeated it slowly, as if tasting the words and finding them rotten. Not I hit someone. Not I think something happened. Not a call to 911, not even a flicker of concern. Just annoyance, just inconvenience, just drinks. Several people in the gallery shook their heads. Someone whispered, "My God." Caprio leaned forward. These are your words, Miss Whitfield, not mine. ROSAVASQEZ stands and KENDALL breaks. Rosa rose slowly from the gallery, one hand gripping the pew for balance. Her legs trembled, but her eyes, red, swollen, exhausted, were steady. Every parent in the room felt the weight of her steps as she approached the podium. She took a breath that shuddered through her whole body. "That woman almost killed my baby," she said, pointing toward the defense table without looking at Kendall. "Miss Patty saved her. Miss Patty took the hit that should have killed my child." Her voice wavered, cracked, then collapsed entirely. "My little girl wakes up screaming at night," Rosa whispered. "She asks if Miss Patty is going to die. She's 6. The room seemed to fold inward on itself. Then Rosa turned slowly to face Kendall directly. "You saw her lying there," she said, each word trembling with grief and fury. "And you drove around her like she was trash, like she didn't matter, like my daughter didn't matter." Kendall's mask shattered. She slid off her chair and hit the floor on her knees, sobbing so hard her words came out as broken gasps. "Please, please don't send me to prison," she choked. "I'll do anything. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, God, I'm so sorry." 30 seconds earlier she had been smirking, confident. Now she was begging for the pieces of her future. Caprio's verdict, the most devastating words. Judge Caprio didn't speak at first. He let the tension settle, thick, suffocating, while Kendall trembled on her knees, tears dripping onto the cold tile floor. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm. Too calm. "That's not remorse, Miss Whitfield," he said softly. "That's fear." Kendall froze. "Remorse," Caprio continued, "would have stopped the car the moment you felt the impact. Remorse would have called 911 before you took another breath. Remorse would have made you stay and hold Miss Patty's hand and try to keep her alive." He removed his glasses, the gesture deliberate, almost ceremonial. "But none of that happened. Here is my ruling." He read the first line: 1 bail revoked. Immediate custody. A strangled gasp escaped Kendall, a sound that made even the bailiff glance over. 2 case transferred to Superior Court for felony prosecution. Charges: vehicular assault, hit and run, reckless driving, failure to render aid, and texting in a school zone. Each charge landed like its own sentence. 3. No early release recommended. You are a flight risk. Kendall shook her head violently, mouthing please, but Caprio continued without pause. For $400,000 restitution from personal funds only. 5. Lifetime driving ban. 6. Mandatory monthly letters to Miss Patty for the duration of your sentence. 7. Funding safety equipment at 10 Rhode Island schools. Then the final words: "Officer Cole, take the defendant into custody." The metallic click of handcuffs echoed. Kendall collapsed into sobs. The courtroom fell into a stunned silence, and Congressman Whitfield, stone-faced, powerless, stared straight ahead. He couldn't save her. The aftermath: 16 months later, 16 months passed before the world heard Kendall Whitfield's name again. When she finally appeared in Superior Court, she stood thinner, gaunt, her once carefully curated confidence gone. No cameras, no designer coat, just a pale jumpsuit and trembling hands. She pled guilty to all charges. The judge, stern, unmoved, read the sentence: 5 years in state prison, no parole for 3 years, lifetime driving ban, $400,000 restitution, monthly letters to Miss Patty for the full term. Kendall nodded, tears streaming, accepting a future she could no longer outrun. Her father, Congressman Whitfield, faced consequences of his own. A formal censure. A brutal ethics committee report. Weeks of national headlines dissecting his influence. He lost re-election by 12 points, his career ending not with a scandal he created, but with one he couldn't erase. And yet life continued. Miss Patty returns to the crosswalk. 14 months after the crash, on a chilly spring morning, the familiar figure in the bright vest stepped onto St. Catherine's corner again. Slowly, carefully, one hand gripping a polished wooden cane, the other clutching her stop sign. Every step hurt. Her doctors had warned her it would, but the smile on her face was steady, proud. She had promised herself she wouldn't come back until she could stand on her own. Word spread fast. By the time she reached the center of the crosswalk, the children had already lined up on both sides of the sidewalk, cheering, clapping, holding little crayon posters that said "Welcome back, Miss Patty." And then Emma broke from the crowd, running full speed, almost tripping in excitement. She threw her arms around Miss Patty's waist. "Miss Patty, you came back." Patty's voice softened. "Of course I did, sweetheart. This is where I belong." Kendall's transformation. For months, Kendall's court-ordered letters arrived like clockwork. The first 5 were hollow, apologies without weight, sentences built from fear, not reflection. "I'm sorry for what happened. I never meant to hurt anyone. I wish I could undo it." Miss Patty read them all, sighed softly, and placed each one in a drawer. Then came letter 6. The handwriting was shaky, like someone trying to hold themselves steady, and the words were different. "Miss Patty, I watched the video again, the whole thing. I forced myself not to look away this time. I saw myself hit you. I saw myself leave you. I saw myself drive around your body like I was late for something more important than a life. I don't know who that person was, but it was me. And I'm trying every day to make sure she never exists again." Patty read the letter twice. Her eyes warmed, not with forgiveness but with recognition, of effort, of humility, of a beginning. She wrote back, "I believe you're trying, keep trying." Kendall received the note in her cell at lights out. She folded it carefully, tucked it under her pillow, and whispered to the dark, "I will." "You said, Patty's law passes unanimously mandatory minimums for school zone hit and runs. Texting in school zones becomes an automatic felony. Enhanced penalties for fleeing when a child is involved. Governor signs it at St. Catherine's. Emma holds Patty's hand, a hero and the child she saved." ChatGPT said, "Here is an expanded, powerful 180-word version of Patty's law passes unanimously. Keeping your tone and emotion. Patty's law passes unanimously. The chamber vote wasn't even close. Every hand rose. Both parties, every district, every corner of the state. Patty's law passed with a unanimous roar. The bill was simple, but its impact was profound. Mandatory minimum prison sentences for any hit and run in a school zone. Texting while driving in a school zone upgraded to an automatic felony, no exceptions. Enhanced penalties, the harshest in state history, if a fleeing driver endangers or injures a child. Legislators called it long overdue. Parents called it justice. Teachers called it finally. 2 weeks later, the governor arrived at St. Catherine's to sign the bill where Patty had nearly lost her life. Reporters expected a podium speech. What they got was a moment. Miss Patty stood with her cane beside the governor, humble, steady, a little emotional. And beside her, holding her hand with both of her tiny ones, was Emma, bow in her hair, backpack half-zipped, eyes shining with pride. Cameras clicked, a hero and the child she saved. When the governor finished signing, he handed Patty the pen. "This happened because of you," he said. Patty squeezed Emma's hand. "And because of her," you said. Ending hook. Judge Caprio keeps one photograph on his desk. A simple moment. Miss Patty crossing the street again, slowly, painfully, bravely, with Emma by her side. Because justice, in the end, isn't about power. It's about who we choose to protect. ChatGPT said, "Here is an expanded, cinematic 150-word ending hook with the same emotional punch." Ending hook. Judge Caprio keeps only one photograph on his desk. Not a family portrait, not an award, not a framed headline. Just a single snapshot, sunlight, a crosswalk, and 2 figures moving slowly across it. Miss Patty leaning on her cane, every step a reminder of what courage costs. And Emma, tiny and determined, matching Patty's pace, her small hand wrapped around Patty's arm as if guarding her now. It's an ordinary moment to anyone else. To Caprio, it is the whole reason the law exists at all. Because justice, at its core, has never been about titles or influence or who can shout the loudest in a courtroom. It is about who we choose to protect, the vulnerable, the overlooked, the ones who trust adults to do the right thing. Caprio looks at that photo every morning before he takes the bench, just to remind himself what justice is supposed to look like. Patty's law passes unanimously. The chamber vote wasn't even close. Every hand rose. Both parties, every district, every corner of the state. Patty's law passed with a unanimous roar. The bill was simple, but its impact was profound. Mandatory minimum prison sentences for any hit and run in a school zone. Texting while driving in a school zone upgraded to an automatic felony, no exceptions. Enhanced penalties, the harshest in state history, if a fleeing driver endangers or injures a child. Legislators called it long overdue, parents called it justice, teachers called it finally. 2 weeks later, the governor arrived at St. Catharines to sign the bill where Patty had nearly lost her life. Reporters expected a podium speech. What they got was a moment. Miss Patty stood with her cane beside the governor, humble, steady, a little emotional. And beside her, holding her hand with both of her tiny ones, was Emma, bow in her hair, backpack half-zipped, eyes shining with pride. Cameras clicked, a hero and the child she saved. When the governor finished signing, he handed Patty the pen. "This happened because of you," he said. Patty squeezed Emma's hand. "And because of her." Ending hook. Judge Caprio keeps only one photograph on his desk, not a family portrait, not an award, not a framed headline, just a single snapshot, sunlight, a crosswalk, and two figures moving slowly across it. Miss Patty, leaning on her cane, every step a reminder of what courage costs. And Emma, tiny and determined, matching Patty's pace, her small hand wrapped around Patty's arm as if guarding her now. It's an ordinary moment to anyone else. To Caprio, it is the whole reason the law exists at all. Because justice, at its core, has never been about titles or influence or who can shout the loudest in a courtroom. It is about who we choose to protect, the vulnerable, the overlooked, the ones who trust adults to do the right thing. Caprio looks at that photo every morning before he takes the bench, just to remind himself what justice is supposed to look like.